For years, the world has been debating about whether climate change, previously global warming, is anthropogenic or cyclical.
Now, whether it's cyclical or natural change, or whether it's an anthropogenic or human-caused change, that's a little harder to answer.
I believe it is cyclical in that the patterns of data from history that we have shows that the temperature range does vary greatly.
How is the federal government presenting climate change?
The government is not trying to make it appear to be a big problem. I think the government's representing the data as fairly as they can.
I'm not impressed with Vice President Gore's credentials as a scientist. I'm impressed with his credentials as a policymaker and as a politician, and I'm impressed with his entrepreneurial skill to make money off of climate change. But I am not impressed with his, his academic credibility.
I think the government may be using some scare tactics, convincing people that they need to spend lots of money on products and services that they may not need, thinking that it might help. So I worry that we could be spending a lot of money and using extra resources on things that may not be helpful at all.
What is the government doing about climate change?
The government does quite a bit. One recent thing you'll hear about in the news is that the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, they are trying to push regulations on greenhouse gases. So make carbon dioxide and methane a pollutant, say it's a bad thing to have in the atmosphere. And that way they can regulate it and they can tax it and they can try to get companies and factories to produce less of these things.
There are two ways that governments typically respond. One is to provide money for research, to actually get more clarity about the processes that are responsible for it and maybe the consequences that will be caused by global warming. And the other is mitigation. So means to reverse the effect, to change our behavior.
I think there's still funding research into it, but I think that it's on the downside. I don't think that it's as much of a concern because there's so many scientists that are coming out that saying there isn't proof that there's just a lot of unanswered questions.
And the government is in full support of all these things by giving funding to organizations as well as resources and allowing testing to be done. So the government is in support of finding the data and giving the truth.
What needs to be done about climate change?
I think more than anything they need to put both sides out there.
I think the government is doing what it can. I think it could do more, but it is restrained by the people.
But I think right now one of the reasons that it's not in the forefront is because there's not a prominent politician, namely in the White House, that is driving the need for climate change, and also it's not a big concern.
The government is also pushing for better fuel efficiency in cars. So instead of having trucks that only get 10 miles to the gallon, they're trying to get trucks that have much more miles to the gallon. And the government is pushing incentives to help people like me and you make our houses more efficient. So put in better windows and better insulation and help to use less electricity and use less greenhouse gases.
It's very one-sided. I think, after the Al Gore Inconvenient Truth movie came out and the book that he wrote and everything, a few years later there were studies that came out that proved that some of the claims he made were not true or not true to the degree that he presented them. So I feel like we just need more information more than anything.
Some people believe that the government is spending too much money on climate change, but others disagree. So what is the real cause of climate change? We may never know.